she was serving coffee. Then everything changed. Welcome back to Silent Heroes, the channel that never lets the courage and valor of our heroes fade from memory. Every story here is a tribute, every moment preserved, every name honored. And today, you will witness a story that will sear itself into your memory, a tale of authority, misjudgment, and the quiet storm of a hero who refuses to be underestimated. The briefing room was calm, sterile, windowless, humming softly with projectors and air conditioning. Officers murmured quietly among themselves, sipping coffee, shuffling papers, unaware that tension was about to erupt like a thunderclap in this ordinary office. Lieutenant Commander Morgan Hayes moved silently behind the counter, pouring coffee into a crisp ceramic cup. Her movements were calm, economical, precise. A rhythm born of years where every second could mean life or death. "Ma'am, this area is for attendees only." The young lieutenant's voice was sharp, tinged with self-importance. He held his hand out, palm flat, a gesture meant to halt, to assert dominance. He didn't know her rank. He didn't know her name. He only saw a woman by the coffee station, and in that instant made 1,000 assumptions. Morgan didn't flinch. She didn't even turn immediately. She placed the cup on the counter and finally, slowly, met his gaze. Her eyes were calm blue, yet beneath them simmered the controlled fury of someone who had survived worse than misplaced ego. "I am an attendee, Lieutenant," she said evenly, her voice carrying the weight of command without raising an inch. The lieutenant's jaw tightened. Confidence faltered for only a heartbeat before he doubled down. "I'm going to need to see your credentials," he demanded. His voice, louder now, echoed faintly through the room. Every head turned. Conversations died. The officers around the massive mahogany table shifted, their eyes narrowing, sensing a misstep about to unravel. Morgan reached slowly into the shoulder pocket of her flight suit. Fingers brushed the edge of her common access card. She pulled it out with the casual authority of someone used to being trusted with more than anyone in the room could imagine. She held it out to him. The young lieutenant snatched it up, scanning the card. For a flicker of a moment, confusion flashed across his face. LCD Hayes, Lieutenant Commander. He was an 04. She outranked him by more than a pay grade. He should have stopped. He should have handed it back with a stammered apology. But pride, arrogance, ignorance held him fast. His eyes narrowed. "Administrative error," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "It's probably a mix-up in the system. Happens all the time during PCS season." Morgan's gaze didn't waver. "My card is valid." He scoffed, shaking his head, sliding it into the rarely used secondary security terminal. Every keystroke loud in the quiet room, like a gavel striking judgment. Officers watched, stiff and uncomfortable. A Marine gunnery sergeant by the door's threshold observed quietly, his expression a mask, but his eyes betrayed the recognition of a story he'd seen before. The junior officer was about to dig a hole, and fast. "It says here you're naval aviation, public affairs, meteorology. You know, flight suits aren't just handed out to anyone these days." The words were sharp, cruel in their precision. He wasn't just questioning her presence, he was negating her profession, erasing every achievement that gleamed subtly from the patches and wings stitched onto her uniform. Morgan's gaze dropped for a heartbeat to the golden wings over her chest, slightly worn, frayed edges, scars of missions flown and survived. A whisper of memory flared in her mind. The roar of a jet's engines at midnight, arresting gears snapping under the deck of a carrier, the smell of smoke and salt spray. Her calm exterior didn't betray a thing, but the lieutenant had unknowingly poked a hornet's nest. "Something wrong, Commander?" he asked, condescending. Her voice dropped a fraction, cool and deliberate. "There must be a misunderstanding." A small murmur ran through the room. Officers exchanged glances. Someone recognized the tension, the rising danger. Then, a Marine colonel halfway down the table leaned forward, his expression suddenly sharp. Recognition. the patch on her shoulder, the insignia of the 143rd Strike Squadron. Memories flooded. A desperate call for close air support in a hostile valley. Explosions, the scream of ordnance, a precision landing that saved dozens of lives. The colonel's hand moved discreetly to his phone. A short, urgent message. Admiral, the junior officer is about to make a catastrophic mistake. Spectre is here. Miles away, Rear Admiral Marcus Vance read the alert. His eyes narrowed, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Spectre, a name that carried missions, medals, and legends. And here, in a briefing room, a young lieutenant was questioning her authority. Vance rose swiftly, his movement commanding, his mind already calculating the perfect response to the impending disaster. Back in the room, the young lieutenant was oblivious. "Your clearance isn't registering for this briefing," he said, voice rising, attempting dominance. "You'll need to leave or—" The door slammed open. Every officer froze. Rear Admiral Vance entered, the Master Chief at his side, presence radiating authority. Silence fell. Vance's eyes locked on Morgan. "Spectre," he said, voice quiet, carrying the weight of reverence and history. The call sign rolled through the room like thunder. Every officer stiffened, recognition dawning like sunlight breaking through clouds. The young lieutenant paled, his mouth opened, closed, opened again. Panic, disbelief, and the realization of monumental error painted his face. Morgan stood straight, every line of her posture exuding composure. Her calm met the storm of recognition. Around her, officers whispered and nodded, the story of her feats filling the air as if it had always been there, waiting to explode. Vance turned to the room, voice rising with authority and reverence. "For those who haven't had the privilege, let me introduce Lieutenant Commander Morgan Hayes, call sign Spectre. She has flown over 900 carrier traps, led strike missions under fire, and has saved more lives than most could ever dream of." The room shivered with disbelief and awe. The junior officer's knees weakened, every word a hammer striking the false pedestal of his arrogance. Morgan's eyes scanned the room, not a hint of triumph, no gloating, only calm, only control. The storm had passed, and she was the eye. The first suspensive cliffhanger was complete. The misjudgment had been exposed, recognition had shifted the gravity, and everyone knew this was only the beginning of a story they would never forget. The legend emerges, and the room holds its breath. Morgan Hayes, call sign Spectre, stood still for a heartbeat, letting the room absorb the weight of her presence. The murmurs rippled like a current through the assembled officers. Eyes wide, necks craning, the realization spreading. This wasn't a junior officer, a PR drone, or someone to be underestimated. This was a living legend, a storm wrapped in calm, a force honed by years in the unforgiving sky. In the flicker of fluorescent light, Morgan's mind drifted, not away, but backward. Afghanistan, Kandahar province, a dusty ridgeline under searing sun, her squad pinned down by insurgent fire. Calls for air support had crackled over broken radios, and then she was there, Spectre 1, her Super Hornet diving from the sun, engines screaming, missiles guided with surgical precision. Explosions illuminated the valley like fireworks, chaos transformed into silence, life preserved by skill and instinct alone. The young lieutenant stared at her, slowly piecing together the insignia, the patches. Confusion furrowed his brow. She can't be. The words choked off. Around him, whispers spread, officers leaning forward, trying to remember, trying to reconcile the calm woman with the hero they thought they knew from reports and rumors. Morgan's voice was soft, almost mundane, yet it carried authority. "This isn't about past missions, Lieutenant. It's about being present, observing, understanding the stakes." She let it linger, letting the weight of her experience settle like a storm cloud over the room. Every gesture, every small motion in her stance reflected decades of training, thousands of flight hours, hundreds of near-death decisions compressed into calm execution. Flashbacks came unbidden, fragments of a life lived in extremes, night operations over the Persian Gulf, an engine failure mid-flight, hydraulics failing, carrier deck rushing toward her like a predator. Every muscle tense, every decision a heartbeat away from catastrophe. And yet, she landed, always landed, lives saved, aircraft intact, mission accomplished. And the young lieutenant thought she was just another officer serving coffee. The Marine colonel who had texted the Admiral leaned slightly closer to his phone, typing again, almost reverently. Admiral Vance, she's Spectre 1, the one who led the extraction, the one who didn't just survive Kandahar, she thrived there. The phone vibrated with acknowledgement, urgency hidden in brevity. The energy of the room shifted, tension still thick, but curiosity laced with awe now. Other officers, previously silent, began connecting dots, the precise movements, the calm confidence, the subtle control over the room. The hints had always been there. Wings slightly frayed, a patch worn soft from repeated use, the faint scar along her right cheek, almost invisible. Each was a testament, a story in itself. The young lieutenant backed up a fraction, his mind racing. He had been so certain, so proud of his vigilance, only to realize the monumental scale of his error. Every unspoken whisper in the room now mocked him. Who do you think you are? Morgan's gaze swept the room, catching the reactions, measuring them, letting the human drama unfold. She didn't need to shout, didn't need to brandish credentials like a weapon. Her past had already done that. Yet the story demanded clarity. The senior officers began speaking quietly among themselves, recalling incidents, sharing silent nods, memories surfacing like ghosts. Then, a sudden, deliberate move. Admiral Vance entered the room fully, his presence filling every corner. The young lieutenant froze again. This was no casual acknowledgement. This was the weight of history stepping into the room. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, call sign Spectre. Your presence here is not only authorized, it is required. The young man here seems to have forgotten, or perhaps never understood, the standard of excellence we serve. Every syllable carried a history lesson. Every word resonated. The young officer's jaw slacked. His assumptions crumbled. He had not just questioned authority, he had questioned legend, and the room knew it. Morgan's eyes flicked again to past missions, night sorties over hostile waters, engines sputtering, radar systems failing, decisions made in the fraction of a heartbeat that separates survival from disaster. Each story was a silent testament to courage, intelligence, and skill honed in extremes. Now the room was slowly realizing the calm woman with the coffee cup had once been the eye of storms that could kill entire battalions or save them with the same hand. The Marine colonel's subtle nod, the whispered recounting of missions, even the sharp intake of breath from an Air Force colonel, all of it fed the narrative without Morgan saying another word. Recognition spread. The junior officer's arrogance, once solid and unyielding, now cracked and splintered. Panic mingled with awe. A twist revealed itself next. Another officer, a Navy captain who had served in the Mediterranean a decade prior, remembered the same call sign, Spectre, associated with an extraction under impossible odds. He recalled communications logs, debriefs, mission briefings, and the silent, unwavering authority of someone who had lived in 2 years than most would live in a lifetime. Shock and realization rippled through the room in waves. Morgan's voice broke the spell, measured, controlled, deliberate. I serve the mission, the men and women under my protection, and the standards we uphold. Personal pride, assumptions, or misplaced vigilance have no place here. Every word was heavy with truth, every pause carefully measured. The tension, sharp as a blade, hovered in the air. The young lieutenant finally stammered, words failing. He tried to speak, to defend his actions, but the room's collective recognition and weight of history drowned out every protest. He understood, finally, the immensity of what he had confronted unknowingly. Morgan's composure did not waver. She was both storm and anchor, legend and mentor, calm and unstoppable. In the quiet that followed, the room adjusted its understanding. Respect was no longer assumed, it was demanded, earned again and again through the life she had lived. Suddenly, the Master Chief spoke, voice like gravel, deep and unwavering. "Sir, she's Spectre 1. There's nothing more to say. All doubts are cleared." The statement carried finality. A wave of understanding washed over the officers. Recognition had transformed confusion into reverence. The young officer swallowed, his arrogance replaced by stunned humility. He had been forced to see, for the first time, what it meant to misjudge someone who had faced death, chaos, and the unimaginable, and lived to command respect. Morgan's gaze softened, not for him, but for the lesson unfolding. Power, skill, and authority weren't shouted. They were shown, they were lived, they were recognized by those who understood the cost and weight of true heroism. The room shifted. Murmurs replaced silence, but with reverence. Stories were whispered, glances exchanged. Each officer now carried the story of Spectre Hayes in their mind, the memory of her calm under pressure, her lethal precision, her unshakable resolve. The young lieutenant remained frozen, caught between shame and awe, caught between what he thought he knew and the terrifying reality of the hero standing just a few feet away. Every movement she made, subtle, careful, deliberate, told a story more powerful than any words could. Recognition was complete. Legends don't need introduction, they demand attention, and Spectre Morgan Hayes had just claimed the room without a shout, without emotion, without a single gesture beyond her calm command. The tension, which had begun with arrogance and ignorance, had transformed into awe and understanding. A slow nod here, a murmured acknowledgement there, officers piecing together what they had only heard in whispers. And in the middle of it all, Morgan Hayes remained the calm, composed eye of a storm, fully aware that history had just unfolded, and she had led it. She turned humiliation into lessons, and the room witnessed history. The room was still charged with tension, every officer frozen in the moment that had just unfolded. Morgan Hayes, call sign Spectre, stood at the coffee station, calm, poised, every line of her body radiating authority and quiet confidence. The young lieutenant's hands trembled as he tried to gather his composure, realizing that the storm he had poked was not only real, but legendary. Admiral Vance stepped forward, his presence commanding, yet measured. The air seemed to shift around him, the hum of electronics fading into the gravity of his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, scanning the room like a predator calculating every detail. "What has just transpired is a lesson in judgment, professionalism, and the values we hold sacred. Lieutenant Commander Hayes is not merely an attendee. She is Spectre 1. Her career embodies courage, skill, and dedication beyond measure." Eyes widened. The whispers began to grow, not in disbelief this time, but in awe. Officers exchanged looks, connecting the dots, the insignia, the patches, the calm control, and the realization spread like wildfire. They had underestimated a living legend. Every detail of her uniform, every subtle gesture now told a story of survival, precision, and mastery under fire. The Admiral continued, voice rising slightly, a slow crescendo that filled the room. "Spectre has flown hundreds of missions where failure was not an option. Carrier traps in the dead of night, engine failures mid-flight, close air support under enemy fire. Her record is impeccable, her judgment flawless, and her courage undeniable. Those of you who doubted her presence today have witnessed the cost of assumption." The young lieutenant's face drained of color. Words failed him. The weight of his ignorance pressed down like a lead vest. Every whisper, every glance, every recounting of her feats struck him with the force of reality, humiliation mixed with awe, and he could feel his pride crumbling. Morgan's voice cut softly through the room, deliberate, calm. She said, letting each word hang in the charged air. "The lesson here," she said, letting each word hang in the charged air, "is not about punishment, it's about awareness. Respect is earned, yes, but it is also owed. Every uniform represents training, experience, and commitment that may not be visible at first glance. Judge carefully, act with knowledge, and recognize the unseen battles that shape those before you." A subtle ripple ran through the room. Officers leaned back, some nodding, some exchanging quiet affirmations. Recognition had transformed into admiration. The young lieutenant swallowed hard, trying to reconcile shame with the lesson. Every muscle in his body ached with the understanding of what he had nearly disrupted and what he had learned too late. Morgans allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. She didn't raise her voice, didn't assert dominance through anger. She let her professionalism and grace speak. Every motion, every pause, every glance conveyed authority built not on fear, but on mastery, not on arrogance, but on respect. She had turned humiliation into a teaching moment. The Master Chief, standing silently to the side, nodded in acknowledgement, his eyes scanning the room. The ripple effect was clear. The lesson had extended beyond the young officer. Every officer present understood the magnitude of what had just happened, the cost of underestimating skill, the value of observation, the power of calm authority. Flashbacks crept into Morgan's mind again, not out of distraction, but as quiet reminders of the standards she had lived by. The roar of jet engines at night, the smell of salt and smoke on the carrier deck, the precision of a strike that saved dozens of lives, all condensed into a single, controlled presence that now commanded the room without raising a hand. The young lieutenant finally spoke, voice trembling, hesitant, yet sincere. "Commander, ma'am, I understand. I see now. My actions were wrong, misguided. I should have known better." His words were fragmented, yet they carried the weight of genuine humility. Morgan steadied him, eyes steady, voice soft but piercing. "Good. That understanding is the beginning. Awareness, humility, and respect, these are as crucial as any skill you will ever learn. Mistakes are inevitable. What matters is how we respond. Learn, adapt, and never assume." The room exhaled collectively. Tension eased, replaced by reflection. Officers absorbed the transformation. The young officer humbled, the legend vindicated, the lesson delivered. Recognition had shifted the room's gravity, turning what began as conflict into a masterclass in leadership, courage, and emotional intelligence. Admiral Vance's tone softened, voice now filled with genuine respect. "Commander Hayes, your presence here is not merely symbolic. It is a testament to what excellence looks like in action and in character. Your ability to teach without anger, to correct without humiliation, elevates everyone in this room. Thank you." Morgan returned the salute, crisp and deliberate. "Glad to be here, Admiral, always." Her voice carried history, authority, and a quiet fire that hinted at the countless missions, countless risks, countless lives she had shaped with precision and courage. The young lieutenant's shoulders slumped. Humility had replaced arrogance, awareness had replaced ignorance, respect, finally, had replaced doubt. The lesson was seared into him, permanent, undeniable. Then, subtle gestures began rippling through the room. An Air Force colonel leaned slightly toward his neighbor, whispering recognition of a shared mission she had led years prior. A Navy captain's eyes gleamed with understanding of the carrier operation she had commanded flawlessly. Each small reaction was a twist, a revelation, a reinforcement of the legend that had just moved through their ranks. Morgan set down her coffee cup finally, the gesture unremarkable yet profound. It marked the conclusion of the confrontation, the transformation of misunderstanding into clarity. She had done more than prove herself. She had taught, inspired, and commanded respect silently. The young lieutenant exhaled slowly, voice barely audible. "Thank you, ma'am, truly." Morgan's gaze softened just slightly. "Now, carry this forward. Every encounter is an opportunity to learn, every assumption a chance to see the truth." Officers around the room nodded quietly, understanding not just the lesson for the young officer, but for themselves. Respect, awareness, and humility were more than words. They were lived standards, embodied by the woman before them. Admiral Vance stepped back, motioning to the exit for the young lieutenant. "Dismissed," he said. The words were final, carrying both reprimand and education. The officer left, pale but wiser, carrying the indelible imprint of the encounter. Morgan allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She had survived storms far deadlier than this, but the principle was the same. Calm authority, grace under pressure, and mastery of oneself were what separated heroes from ordinary men. She had turned a moment of challenge into an enduring lesson. Then, addressing the unseen audience, the viewers of Silent Heroes, her words reached beyond the room. If this story has moved you, if it has reminded you that courage, discipline, and grace demand recognition, please support our mission. Subscribe, leave a like, comment where in the world you're watching from. Your engagement ensures that heroes are never forgotten, their stories preserved, and their lessons carried forward. A pause, letting the message settle. Morgan's presence commanded attention even without motion. The quiet dignity, the professional mastery, the lived legend, it was all visible, all tangible. Heroes endure, lessons last, and Silent Heroes ensures neither fades into oblivion. Officers slowly began to exit, leaving room for reflection. Whispers of admiration followed, stories recounted, eyes bright with respect. The young lieutenant walked out last, carrying shame and humility, but also the start of growth and understanding, a seed planted by grace, experience, and authority. Morgan took a final sip of her coffee, the calm after the storm. Every action, every word, every pause had reinforced the principles she had lived by for decades. Excellence, courage, and respect, they were not abstract, they were tangible, visible, and unforgettable. And as she left the briefing room, shoulders straight, head high, eyes steady, she did so not with arrogance, but with the quiet pride of one who commands respect by living the standard she embodies. The room, the officers, and the memory of all present carried her lesson forward, etched permanently in mind and spirit. The story of Spectre Morgan Hayes concluded here, but its echoes reached far beyond the walls of the room. For every viewer, every officer, every young leader who witnessed this moment, one truth was undeniable. Courage, grace, and mastery endure. They shape, inspire, and educate. And with channels like Silent Heroes, the legacy of our bravest will never fade. Remember, Morgan's voice carried one last time, over the silence and the lingering awe, valor exists not just in combat, but in dignity, in lessons taught, and in respect earned. Do not forget, carry it forward.